Video games, like movies and TV, frequently contain themes of violence. And that, for the most part, is okay with the Daily Mail. But video games, like movies and TV, can also try and tackle difficult themes. Themes like domestic violence. And that is not okay with the Daily Mail.
David Cage's latest opus, he does have more than one, is Detroit Become Human. We don't know exactly when it's going to come out yet, but we do know it's another story-focused game about making decisions. The game is a sci-fi title set in a future in which androids exist, helping out around the house and stuff like that. And they play a big role in events in the game. Events like the physical and emotional abuse of a child, and more specifically, what the android might do to stop it. The fact that Detroit Become Human includes themes of domestic violence was first made public when, back in October, at Paris Games Week, Sony released a trailer for the game which quite heavily featured domestic violence. The point, according to developers Quantic Dream, was to present a very important moment in android Kara's story who players can control. Kara is owned as a butler, nanny, assistant type thing by the abusive father, Todd. Quote, confronted with Todd's violence towards his little girl, Kara feels compelled to disobey and risk her life to save Alice.
Now, over the weekend, The Mail on Sunday ran an article about this. The article included some strong words from children's campaigners and Tory politicians. There really were a lot of quotes in this article, so let's go through some of them. Andy Burrows of the NSPCC said, quote, any video game that trivializes or normalizes child abuse, neglect or domestic violence for entertainment is unacceptable. I totally agree with you, Mr. Andy Burrows there. Anything that trivializes or normalizes child abuse is unacceptable. I agree, and also that applies to TV and film too. I've got no qualms with what you said there. Whether this does trivialize or normalize it just because it's in a video game is another matter.
The problem here is the premise of all these quotes is that the game cannot do a good job of exploring these themes in a mature way.
The Mail quotes Children's Commissioner for England, Anne Longfield, as saying, quote, it seems to end up in a clumsy, inappropriate and graphic gameplay that is no more than an unpleasant exploitative way of making money off the back of real suffering.
This quote I find quite interesting because of the words an unpleasant exploitative way of making money, and I kind of feel a little bit that like that's the games industry's own damn fault because it's so geared and so obviously kind of pointed towards being like a cash bonanza for the publishers and stuff. Everything's so bright and like, you know, look at Star Wars Battlefront marketing and stuff, and it's like, oh, look at this game, look at this game, look how amazing this game is. Give us your money, give us your money, give us your money. That's kind of not the same for movies and film, where the kind of the art and the actual end result of the film is what everyone talks about, and not so much the actual how much it costs and how much the loot boxes are and what the season pass includes and what the limited edition, because all that money making side of gaming can kind of understand why somebody would see all games as just being a money making exercise rather than in any way art.
Next, Childline founder Dame Esther Rantzen actually asked Sony to remove the scene or even pull the game from sale. Quote, violence against children is not entertainment. It's not a game. It's a real nightmare for thousands of children who have to live through these kinds of scenarios. The makers of this game should be thoroughly ashamed. I think it's perverse. Who thinks beating a child is entertainment?
No one does, Esther Rantzen.
Not
no
me.
one thinks that beating a child is entertainment. Not anyone who's going to buy this game. Not David Cage. No matter how hard Mail on Sunday try and make him look weird by picking the worst possible picture of David Cage, he's not mental. This is kind of the problem with all this, isn't it? They're just dismissing video games as it's no good. They can't do a good job of this. Disregarding the storytelling and the thematic qualities of games and how they can explore topics in interesting ways that movies and TV just can't do. They're not thinking about that. And of course Esther Rantzen isn't thinking about that. She is Esther Rantzen. She doesn't know anything about video games, so I understand that she would come from this from a place of ignorance, and that's not her fault.
If those of you who don't know, she founded Childline, which is like a charity for kids in the UK here. So, no, obviously she's going to be looking after kids and things like that. But what like Mike said, I think she's ignorant to the medium of games. She's assuming that games cannot pull off this type of theme. TV and films can do it, right? Why is it games that can't do it, Esther? Why would you assume that games can't do it in the right way?
No one thinks child abuse is entertainment. Perhaps David Cage thought it would be an interesting topic to explore and maybe look at it as a social issue, a real problem in society and in civilization. How's it going to change in the future with things like AI? That's what he's trying to explore, I think, probably. There were also quotes from Tory MP Damian Collins, who is chairman of the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. He said it is completely wrong for domestic violence to be part of a video game regardless of what the motivation is. Domestic violence is not a game, and this simply trivialises it. It's dangerous to plant the seed in people's minds that the way to deal with abusers is to use violence against them. Just brushing video games aside like it's nothing. That's the chairman of Culture in the UK. They're saying that. He's saying that no matter what context, you can't have domestic violence in video games.
Ironic, isn't it, how he says that including this type of theme in a game trivialises that theme, whereas in essence what he's doing is completely trivialising the media of gaming itself.
And the last line there, it's dangerous to plant the seed in people's minds that the way to deal with abusers is to get violent with them. But again, that's the old kind of video game premise that what you do in the video game, you will then go out and do in real life, which is not true of movies. We don't think the people who watch slasher movies will then become slashers. It's just another old way of thinking that is coming through in all these quotes. And Peter Saunders, founder of the National Association of People Abused in Childhood, said, quote, "Abusers will get off on this stuff, and the other thing we know beyond question is that games end up being played by children."
When asked about the inclusion of domestic violence, David Cage told Eurogamer at Paris Games Week, quote, "I try to tell a story that matters to me, that I find moving, interesting and exciting, as my role as a creator is to maybe deliver something that people don't expect. Would I be doing my job as a creator if I was making the game that you want me to make? I don't think so. I'm creating something that I find moving and meaningful. And I think people should see the scene, play the game, and see it in context to really understand it. The rule I give myself is to never glorify violence, to never do anything gratuitous."
Cage also said there are actually some things he would not do. Quote, "I'd never do a racist game or a misogynist game. These are the limits." One thing I want to point out is that the movie It came out this year, and that featured a domestic violence storyline on a child, basically, and that wasn't explored in any real kind of philosophical way. They didn't try and add weight to that. It was one of the most popcorny kind of summer blockbuster movies we've had all year, and that was in there as a dramatic storyline for sure, but it wasn't poking holes at the issue and trying to figure out where we are as a society or anything. And this was in a movie, and that wasn't really brought up as a topic of debate. I can't remember seeing the Mail on Sunday articles and discussed that, and that's because it was a film, and films are accepted as art, whereas games are not. They're just seen as products so far and entertainment, and that's very much the problem with this. That's just something I don't get. I don't get why it's okay in it, and it's completely unacceptable when it comes to Detroit Become Human.
If domestic violence is not explorable in gaming, for example, then surely it's not acceptable in TV or film either. You know, you can't say that gaming isn't allowed to do it, whereas TV and film are. That's just undermining gaming as a legitimate medium. It's just an example of mainstream media again scapegoating the games industry because they don't understand it, because people don't play it, and they see it's just a hobby for kids. It's not a hobby for kids anymore. Say it time and time again, the average age of a gamer these days is 35 years old. This is a legitimate means of exploring complex narrative stories. Just because it's a game does not mean that it's not serious.
I think whether or not this game is actually going to trivialise it, which it's just, basically it's too early to tell. The game isn't out yet. You can't decide if anything deals with anything in a good way or not until the product is out there, and that's kind of what David Cage said. Just have a look at the whole product and see it in context before you decide either way. Putting it in a trailer, maybe, I don't know if that was the right move, but that's a completely different issue. That's not the point. These people here are saying that it's terrible to have domestic abuse in any capacity in video games. That's just flat out not the case. It's because I consider video games to be an art form, to be just the same as movies and TV and books. It can tell you a story in so many different and interesting ways. Of course, you can see from the Tory MP there, just kind of dismiss video games as being nothing, it's just being throwaway stuff, and they don't accept that it's art in any way. And I do.
Why don't they just interview people who know a thing about games? People who appreciate the medium as an art, who don't undermine it to think that just because it's a game, it's going to do it badly. That just isn't the case. These people are just totally ignorant towards gaming, and that's why the mainstream media annoys me.
The issue absolutely is not to do with the charities and whether they've just done what's been asked them. They've been presented the story by the Mail on Sunday. They've given their side of the what they see, and that's absolutely fine. This is how they look at it. The weight of the story from the Mail on Sunday just does not give any credence to video games. The debate and the counter argument that it is art and that they should be challenging, and why should domestic abuse be a topic that can be explored in video games. There's none of that in there. It's all of the criticism, and the issue is very much the Mail on Sunday, which is dog shit. Well, I'm going to be honest, that was a very difficult video to film. It's difficult to get this complex issue across. I don't know what you thought of what we said. Have you got any of your own opinions? Let us know down in the comments. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more stuff every single day. There's another video right there which you can watch right now, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. See you next time.